Welcome to another episode of Nah, Not All Hood. Now, I've said it 1,000 times, and I will continue to say that Talaam Acey is hands down one of my favorite spoken word poets. With an MBA in finance and a bachelor's degree in accounting, Talaam left the business world to become a full-time poet. He is one of the most prolific, dynamic, engaging, and infectious poets I know, with awards too many to list. But the rock star poet life also comes with a price. Today, we talk about the stress management of alcohol and how, as artists, it's sometimes our only friend. Enjoy the conversation.
In Iceland, they had a really bad drug problem. The kids were out on the street, the teenagers, they'd be out in the middle of 2 a.m., in the middle of the night, drunk. About 42% of the teens were just out there. Everybody was really concerned, obviously.
They created an area.
Well, they created a pact. The parents did, and said, all right, we're all going to come together and let's do something about this. We're going to make a pact amongst ourselves that we're going to be more engaged with our children, number one. We're going to talk to them more. If I'm sitting with them eating dinner twice a week, I'll do it 4 times a week. If I'm doing it 4, I'm going to do it more. The goal is do it more. Then they put in $100 million to create things that the kids could do, whether it was swimming pools, recreational, youth engagement. Exactly. Then they had a curfew. And, they recently tried to have a curfew in Newark. And I say that because you're from Newark. And that didn't work out. But
That's strange.
Yeah, how about that? But that's a whole nother story. But then they were able to implement that. Again, this was Iceland. So it's, a different country, and we're dealing with different history. And that makes a big difference. But it went from 42% to 5% of the people in that same age group. They weren't out on the streets. And I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
Well, first of all, I don't know who verifies their facts, so let's start with that. You know what I mean?
Oh, by the way, and they did a survey. That was part of the thing, too.
I'm just saying, I have questions of what other countries tell us about themselves.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to paint us. They're not going to paint themselves in a dark light when they're sharing it internationally. But in terms of what you're saying, I think that alcoholism is a little bit more of a complicated problem than just what they've done with their children. But I think those things can help. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like gun violence. And I'm one of those people who don't believe it's the guns. It's the people. It's the mental illness of the people. And I think that there are people who have holes that need to fill those holes. And it's a question of what are they going to do. So I still got my holes. It's not like I don't drink anymore.
Right.
And now I'm like you. I'm not like you. You know what I mean? I still have so many holes and so many issues and such levels of despair and depression, and that could be a whole nother conversation. You know what I mean? So I have to find ways to encourage myself to want to stay alive, which was a role that alcohol presumably played at some point, but it stopped serving that purpose and became a habit or an identity. It's just something that I did. But I've got the type of responsibilities. We got like the spoken word Apex is a spoken word concert. We do in other places. I got albums. I can't afford to no more. And I think that's why as a teenager I stopped eating chicken and turkey or beef, or they poured Coca-Cola on the vinyl of a car, the vinyl part of the paint off, and it melted it. I said, I'm not drinking that. So all you have to do for me generally is make me understand that whatever benefit I think is coming from something is not outweighing the cost of that thing or the risk that it brings, and I'll stop.
So this is fascinating. It's like you're speaking a whole different language.
Man, I would go to, and that's why when we were talking earlier, I was asking if you had the context. So a big part of the context is when it started. It started when I was very young, right? When I was, I don't know, probably 10, 11 years old drinking, right? The other thing is it did get to a point where drinks were like kind of my friends. Even with me not really drinking anymore now, I'm a teetotaler or something right now. But, even with that, I can still go to a bar. I was at a bar last night, you know what I mean? And I'll drink right now like salsa and a splash of cranberry or a non-alcoholic beer or something. But I can look at the liquor and everything almost has a story for me.
Wow.
And that started in London when I went to London. I didn't know anybody. I got on a plane. I knew there was going to be an open mic. No place to stay. Didn't even have a return ticket. You could buy like flights without return tickets back then. I think now international flights, you got to get a round trip. But I didn't have a way home. I just flew out there to perform at open mics, you know, and I didn't know anyone. And because I didn't know anyone, I would go to the bars and I would feel like I had friends because I knew the bottles, you know what I mean?
Right.
You know,
You know all the
bottles.
names.
I knew the names, and I had a story, and I know where this is from. I know something about the company,
Right.
or I have a memory of when I had that.
As a conversation starter too, right? Because you can use that as a conversation
I'm
starter. I know you.
a gregarious person, so if I go someplace, I can go to a poetry event, and if no one recognizes me, I'll never talk to anyone. I'll just sit in the dark in the back.
And how often does that happen?
If you
Like,
if you,
come on, like-
if you get in there early enough, you know, if you get in there early enough.
So if the liquor was your friends, or if the drinks were your friends in a sense, do you look back and say, if you had more real friends or more, I don't know, people or to help you through, that you wouldn't have gone to that, so that the friends and the drinks were a replacement for what you were missing or what was missing in your life?
Not at all.
Really? So
Not at
why this? I mean, that's really intense. I mean, you talked about that. It is like an art form. You're describing those drinks. I'm just
Yeah,
wondering.
we could go into. If we were standing at a bar and we were going down the line at bottles, I would be talking a lot about those.
Why do you think
I'm
that
not,
is?
I'm a bit misanthropic, right? I don't really gravitate toward people.
Here.
You know,
I resemble that remark.
me and my father have an estranged relationship, you know, and I won't harp too much on that because we've been working to spend more time together. His birthday was actually last Sunday, and I went and, you know, took him to brunch and talked, and he said a couple of things. He has a way of saying certain things that make me laugh, and I didn't grow up with him. So it's just funny because it's almost like genetic. It's like
Yes.
there's certain things he says, and I'm like, that is hilarious. And I keep harping back to things that he said even last weekend, but we don't really know each other like that. So it's not like something that I took from when I came up and growing up with him. You know, it's just must be DNA. It must be something that, you know, some things that trigger me that he says that are just natural.
Yeah.
So how?
Haven't been looking for a bunch of extra friends. Never in life. I've always just wanted a close knit group of friends
yeah.
who didn't bother me, who didn't call me constantly, who didn't come over.
Right.
That was the thing in Jersey. Somebody come over your house and be like, "Hey, where you going?"
Right.
Nowhere with you?
Yeah.
Is that
No.
your-
As soon as they open the door, like
Yeah.
they'll
Right
open the
there.
door, like,
Oh,
hey,
right.
hey, where you headed to?
Yeah. Right,
Yeah, I thought I
right.
was headed here. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, where you on your way to? That was
Like,
how
you're
people.
not coming in here.
Yeah,
Right, right.
You on your way? So I've never been. You know, and most of my drinks were alone. You know, most of the time it's alone. It's not like going to a bar with friends or anything like that. And if I went to a bar, I didn't want to talk to nobody. I didn't want to be bothered.
Yeah.
Enjoy your drink. Let me enjoy my drink.
I like looking at people. So like the belt line out here was like I could set up a chair and just sit here for hours.
Yeah, people
You know what I mean?
watch.
Yeah. So how long have you not been drinking?
May 20th, and that was what I was getting to when we were talking earlier.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like it has something to do with Will because that I started work on this project for Will, and as it was coming together, the drinking was the idea of drinking was becoming less palatable to me. You know what I mean?
Now, was Will someone who passed
Can you
away?
tell us? Yeah.
Will was killed. Yeah.
Will the real one? He's from South Miami. He had a spot called the Literary Cafe.
Yeah.
And it was it was the poetry spot to go to.
Yeah.
And Will was a really good friend of mine. He was one of my favorite poets. But Will and Talaam were like this. And I met Will separately, but before meeting Will, Talaam has always been one of my favorite poets. And then when I started, being friends with Will and then realized that Will and Talaam were really
tight.
good. It was like, man, both both of these guys are like my favorite poets. So Will got. Well,
Will was murdered 13 years
I
ago.
want to tell this interesting story
May
though
29th.
about. So on my album, there's a song. There's the last piece on the album is called "So I Run," and it's one of the it's the only poem I've ever done that I didn't write. And it was a Will poem. And when Will and I met, we traded CDs, and I remember being on a plane and I listened to his CD over and over again from Miami to back to LA. And I saw, some of these joints were produced by Talaam Acey. Like I'm in. And I heard So I Run, and Bill Withers talks about the first time he heard Strange Fruit. And Bill Withers, this prolific songwriter, said when he heard Strange Fruit, that's a song he wished he had written. I felt that way about So I Run. It's always one of my favorite pieces. So then fast forward, Will, and ironically enough, the song is about, the poem is about going through history and saving his heroes. Yeah. So in the poem, he saves Harriet Tubman, Emmett Till, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Tupac, Biggie.
Yeah,
I'm leaving two people out. The 4 girls in Birmingham and Medgar Evers.
Yeah.
So the irony is, fast forward, Will got shot down in the parking lot of his own poetry.
There's a deeper irony, which is when I met Will, he had a manager, and not like manager that, how you have a friend and they manage you.
Right.
So it wasn't like a professional manager with an agency, but a friend.
Yeah.
A sister. He's really close to women. I never understood the relationship he had with women, and in that I never asked him about it. So like he introduced all these women into my life that he was so close to, and I stayed away from the women because I never understood what the context of what was going on with the relationship. And to this day, I've never asked any of those women what was the context of your relationship. You know what I mean? But this one particular woman, he asked her to be his manager. Like anomaly, he had her help him manage the club. Like Ingrid, he was working with her to start other venues around Atlanta. With Red Riding Hood and Tracy Nubian Speaks.
Right.
He was like in Honeybee. He helped them write poems and cultivate. We workshopped.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
This particular sister, he asked to manage him. She was in an abusive relationship that everybody was trying to get her out of. And in addition to managing him, she tried to organize poetry in Atlanta. So she had a website. It was called, the name of the website was the E-Literary Cafe, you see? And the girl didn't listen, and eventually the guy killed her. So he started the club, the Literary Cafe, based on that website that the girl ran that was managing him.
Wow.
And then years later, he gets killed at the club on May 29th.
Wow.
13 years ago. So was that 2011?
But that opened your eyes.
Well, as we were working on the project, one of the things I kept thinking about was how badly he didn't want me to drink. And
Will was drinking. He was like Red Bull.
Yeah, he drank Red Bull, he drank Cuban coffee. If you went to his house, the 13-gallon garbage can would be filled with Cuban coffee cups, a little small, and cigarette boxes. That was his thing. But he didn't, and everybody's like John Fly Poet in LA, same way. I think he always kind of like wanted me to just kind of stop. You know what I mean? And which was weird because him too. I talk about Will. We told a story earlier, right? Where we go to the liquor store, the drive-through liquor store. They give us the bottle of Crown Royal. Will puts it under the seat, and not to be sneaky. He just put it under the seat because he felt like that would be a good place to hold it for now. And they come back with the change and like, oh, we forgot to give you your bottle. And he was like, did we? He's like, you forgot to give us that bottle. You crazy? Why are you playing with us? So they went and get another bottle. Now we got 2 bottles. You know what I mean? But
Right, it's like he wanted
me to stop,
but kind of enabled you. Still,
and the same thing with like John, like Fly Poet. You go over his house, he got mad liquor in the house. Like, I thought you don't drink. Like, nah, it's just for my friends. So be relaxed, whatever. He would take me to. I remember he took me to meet Stevie Wonder, to interview with Stevie Wonder. So on Stevie Wonder's birthday one year, he interviewed me, and John brought me there, for the interview because part of it was to promote Fly Poet, and. I think on the way there, he picked me up from the hotel, and I'm already like, got the bottle, whatever, the pint. He's like, yo, like, it was like 8 in the morning or something. He's like, yo, you You sure? You know what I mean?
Wow.
And I mean, I was drinking crazy back then. It was crazy because like, the Vanessa Williams, the dark skinned one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she was there. Grant Hill was there. And Della Reese. And Della Reese was there, and I just wondered. I was like, I'm staring at her, and I'm trying not to, because I'm like, she's gonna think I'm weird. You know what I mean? And I want to be like, does anyone mow your lawn? Because I'll just like, I'll come over if you have a lawnmower or whatever. I'll just come over every couple of weeks, and you know, I was like, don't creep this lady out. You know, don't creep this lady out. But he was saying it then, and then in my mind, it's crazy because I know how lit I was that morning. That morning, I was lit. Remember, I must have had a drink all night too, right, at the hotel. So I go to the show, and Stevie's there, and I was like so self-conscious because Stevie obviously can't see,
But he
which
can smell.
means better.
Like other senses.
Right.
Heightened senses.
And it's coming out your pores.
We're next to each other,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm like, damn, this is crazy.
So, but at the end of the day, he said he was so inspired by you. So on the one hand, you have that. But then on the other hand, you're getting
I think
lit in the morning.
Yeah, I think I irritated him too because the part of the conversation was about how I was supposed to do a show with him before, and he asked me to do the show, and I said no, right? I said because I had a show in Boston, and I told my mother about it, and she's like, that's not how that works. Like, if Stevie wants you to do a show, you don't have anything. I thought that was the professional way to carry on. So in that conversation that's recorded, he said he's like, well, why don't you come and do it? Because I explained to him what happened. He was like, whatever, but come back and do it. You know, and I think where our communication, he was like, I'll take my phone number and all this stuff. Our communication fell apart, I think, because the show itself recorded it. That's how people can hear it. And that's how I ended up putting it on YouTube. And they gave me a CD of the recording of the show. So the first thing, I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I was like, maybe I could put it on my next Spoken Word CD. And I called him and left that on the machine. And I never heard from him.
You
again.
never heard from him.
And I don't even know that he knew that they gave that to me.
That happens often with Stevie. You leave a message and you will not hear back. Not for any reason, but
they told me
I've left him several messages.
No,
Stevie don't call me back either.
they told me back then that he has a sensitivity for artists who believe that they've become something big,
Oh,
and
interesting.
when an older, more established artist tries to reach out to them, they're disrespectful. You know, like they were telling me about people calling or him calling to talk to someone to maybe do a show or work on an album or something, and they're like, well, we'll talk to his people and they'll call you back. And he's like, but it's Stevie himself.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So, you know, it was like when he had that thing with the Jonas Brothers, whatever they put him on stage with these white kids that were singing, and they were real popular and famous at the time, and it was like, oh, look at the old black dude playing the piano.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
That's not what he wanted. That's not the look.
So they said he was really sensitive about respect.
So I think what was interesting, because I think when we put the show together, I didn't know that you stopped drinking, right? And
I didn't tell you.
Right. So here we are. Because, you know, the thing that really intrigues me is like why we drink. Right? Like so
Yeah.
I'm not quite where you are in terms of having let it go yet. There, you know, I'm
dig that.
hoping I'm close to it. But you know, but it makes me think about like, okay, we know alcohol is toxic to our body, right? We know that it's a poison to our body. We know how it can make us feel on the come down. We know that there's really no
Physical.
there's no nutritional
Yeah.
benefit that it has, yet we do it so much.
There's so many poisons in the supermarket that it almost invalidates the whole idea of alcohol itself being poison when the whole market or 80% of the market is poison.
We're
And,
ingesting a bunch of other
in a
poisons.
supermarket, I hardly buy anything. I'm either in the produce, you know, I don't go down the frozen food aisle because I know it's all processed. You know what I mean?
Right.
Donald Rumsfeld, I think about him all the time, right? Because I guess he was the person who, long before he became this politician and I guess he was Secretary of Defense, whatever, but long before he got that designation, he became rich and powerful because I guess his company discovered that you could replace sugar with cancer, right? So when you see, so I don't think about that all the time because I was drinking Gatorade.
Well, hold on.
Hold up. I was drinking Gatorade Zeros, recently when I stopped drinking. I started drinking a lot of because I was trying to hydrate and get electrolytes and all that stuff, But anything that says zero sugar, diet soda, diet whatever, is usually got some form of cancer in it. So carcinogenic.
Yeah.
So they, they came up with what was it, aspartame,
Right.
aspartame. So they, that whole equal and everybody in a NutraSweet and everybody's like, oh my God, sugar's dead. No, you're dead though. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So they keep going like, so it's we got the high fructose corn syrup, right? But they've gone further than that. They were like, all right, well, people aren't drinking HFCS anymore, so now we're going to give them this type of sugar. If you look at it and you see, like it'll be like introverted sugar or something, but another name for like cancer. So I'm saying like, and you could go through the whole supermarket.
Yes.
It's
so many
full of poison.
poisons.
And I've heard people say that. Why would you poison yourself?
I was looking at this documentary, and there was this man who took that exact thing on, and he called, these cancer, or I'm not sure which societies, but one that was supposed to help you with it, calls them live and says, why are you recommending food that have carcinogens? Because we know that carcinogens cause cancer. It really is all
by
written.
definition.
Yeah, by definition, right. And they just, sir, we're going to have to call you back.
That you can't sell in other countries.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it tripped me out when someone pointed out that like with ramen noodles, that the noodles and the packaging are not significantly different materials. And that with the bread that Subway and McDonald's and Burger King and all of them use with the brominide and all of that in it is pretty much foam, and that
Plastic.
they're not materially different than yoga mats.
So you say you just chose your vice, that we all choose it because it's all over.
Yeah, I mean, let me jump to the end then, real quick. The question of why was I drinking? Saying that it's poison isn't gonna stop me when I know that everything else is poison anyway. And my thought was, because there's a thing in The Wire, the show The Wire, where they were talking to the dude who was homeless, living under a bridge, trying to report something, and he was like, have you been drinking or are you sober? And the dude's response was, you think I would sleep under a bridge sober? And I used to say that all the time, as a euphemism, like I didn't sleep under the bridge, but you think I'm gonna go through all the things I'm going through and not find something to take the edge off? That's what I used to say. And then weed didn't do it for me, right? Smoking weed with my friends and everybody be like real calm and peace, and I'm just like, when does it kick in?
Let me go have this drink.
Am I supposed to feel anything other than tired? I don't feel anything.
I'm just hungry.
Yeah. So to skip to the end is that question of why was I drinking, right? And it was because I have sometimes severe depression. I don't ideate over suicide. I don't have suicidal ideations, right? Because I got too much pride. I'm too fly, right? I can't kill myself, right? I mean, I'm really into that legacy thing, and that it's like that whole I just.
He's like, look at me. Look at me.
I can't do that. And that's not how they're gonna look at me and see, But I have ideations of death. So I have ideations where I glorify death. Whereas I think things would be better if I weren't here. I'm just not doing it.
Right.
A gun to my head, and I've had that situation. I don't blink. Go ahead. Go ahead. I don't. So when people talk about not drinking, I'm like, yeah, I could not drink, but I wouldn't be here for you to tell me to not drink because I'd be dead. That's what I was thinking. But over time, and as of late, I began to realize that I have those same glorifications of my death when I'm drinking. So what is it
What's
solving?
the purpose? Right. Wow.
It's not stopping me from thinking about death. Sometimes it makes me more cheerful. But in your older age, that cheerfulness becomes goofiness. Right. And people looking at you like, what is it? And even after stopping and being with friends who are drinking, and I'm listening to them and I'm like, they wouldn't have said that if they were sober.
Right.
Or not, or they wouldn't have said it like that.
Would it say liquid confidence?
Yeah, they wouldn't have said that. Wow. Or they wouldn't have said it like, and they're not making as much sense as they think they are. You know, so if it's not keeping me from, you know, if I'm going to have my homicidal or my ideations about being dead and how great that would be and I can't wait, you know, I wake up, if I was waking up in the morning and I was like, oh man, which I do a lot sometimes, like, damn, here we go again. You know what I mean? So if I was waking up in the morning like that, it's like, all right, well, you know, I have a refrigerator in my garage separate from the one in the kitchen that was just mainly for drinks. You know what I mean? Beers, scotch in there, all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean? Wake up in the morning, it could be 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, like, all right, well, then you take this drink, and then now it takes your mind off of it, but does it really? Because it would still be there.
Regardless.
Are there any friends of yours looking back that you say could have stopped you some way? Because you mentioned earlier you had friends that were concerned.
No, stopping people from drinking is not a task for other people. It's only a task for the person that's doing the drinking. You know what I mean? And
how would you have crossed that bridge then?
The person, and that's what I think that's what, because that's what I left out with John Fly Poet. As much as he wanted me to stop drinking back in the day, whenever I would do his show, he would give me a fifth of Glenlivet, or the venue would give me a fifth of Glenlivet before the show. I'd have half of it drank before I got on stage. And in my younger days, fine. I could actually perform and do the show and then finish the rest of it when I got off stage and then have some more at the hotel room. And then I would be fine. But Chuck D said something that I thought was really interesting in a podcast. Another thing that hasn't left my mind. He said, when you're younger and you're drunk, you're drunk. When you're an older man and you're drunk, you're a drunk.
Wow.
Bang bang.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, damn.
Yeah. So when I hear about your level of drinking, makes me feel like a light drinker.
It's funny because when I watch
but I say that like,
how candid can we be though?
no, I mean that's what the
About you too, like about conversations you and I have had. How candid?
we could
We've had conversations on a couple of occasions where it's the morning and you're like, you know, I just threw something in my coffee, whatever, and I'm thinking, man, I hope this works out, because for me, and I don't think it works that way for you. For me, and I'm not a fall down drunk. I'm not a violent drunk. I don't come home and yell at my wife or something like that. I never, yelled at my girlfriend or something like that, or fought her. Never called a woman out of her name in my life, drunk or sober. I don't. It's not something I do. The B word, ain't no woman ever heard me call her that in my lifetime. It never will. It's not. So I'm the type of drunk that likes to be alone with my drink, maybe sitting on the porch with a cigar or something. And chill. I don't stumble around. I haven't had any drunken car accidents, or drunken moving violations or anything like that. I got stopped drinking when the cop saw me because he was a motorcycle cop. He drove by in a place in Phoenix where there's a zero.
He saw you.
Yeah,
I
had a big giant Bud Light can, like the 22.
That was on you.
That was on me. I was like, ah. And apparently, Arizona is a zero tolerance alcohol state. Like, so there's not even like, it's not a question of whether you have 0.1 or
Right.
0.2.
No, yeah, it's just
if you have any
Right.
in Arizona, because their whole system is based around prison.
Right.
Right. Arizona's they built different.
So I couldn't come up with reasons to drink. When you stop coming up with not excuses, because I think you're a non-drinker. So I think as a non-drinker, it seems like a problem to solve, but it's not necessarily a problem to solve. There's a quote that I think I posted it today, but I read it a while ago, which is abstinence is, complete abstinence is easier than perfect moderation, and that's, I think St. Augustine said it.
Right.
And that was what you could chase perfect moderation for years and years and years. And my thing is, I'm always like, but I know how it ends. And I would stop, cold turkey. Don't drink for a week. Don't drink for 2 weeks. Don't drink for a month. Sometimes a couple of months. Then I go back, you know what I mean? And the first drink would be great. Like, yo, this tastes so good. I don't even remember it tasting as good. You know what I mean? Not like cheap stuff like, Whistle Pig or Basil Hayden, and you're like, yeah, this is good. And then over time, you're like, oh, I remember this feeling, because you've been off of it for a month or two. You're like, oh, I remember this feeling, and you're good. You might have 2 drinks that first night. You know what I mean? And then as time goes on, it's 2-3 weeks later, and now you're drinking in the morning. Like that was always the thing for me. When I had the morning drink, and it's not like, I dig what people say, like, yo, it's 5 o'clock, it's 5 p.m. somewhere. I dig it. But the thing about morning drinking was that it's the start of drinking all day long.
See, that's interesting. So for me, like I've grown up, Kahlua and my coffee. Like that was always, it was always like my thing. Not every morning, but that was my, If I'm on vacation, I'm gonna have a little, Kahlua. I think now as I've gotten older, it might be bourbon and coffee. But there's an interesting thing when we think about, alcoholism, if you will. There's this thing called a gray zone, right? So it's not necessarily as readable as a full blown drunk or alcoholic,
stumbling like
But when you, let's say, consistently you're putting down 3-4 drinks, 5-6 times a week, and not necessarily realize that you're doing it on such a consistent basis. Sometimes that level of, and I think they call it gray alcoholism or something, but it's
would that be functional alcoholic?
Well, I think functional,
that's
it is, and it's the same and different, because I think functional is describing something different.
Yeah.
So I think functional, no matter how much you drink, functional is more a question of how you produce and how productive you are. So and I could be extremely productive drunk. And drunk is not even the best word, because I never drank to the point where I got drunk. And if I bought a bottle, I didn't finish the bottle. I'm not one of those people who like, oh, I got to finish this bottle, go get another bottle. Like, I would, drink more than what you said, more than 3 or 4 every few days. But the thing is, I'm a obsessive compulsive, and I know that about myself. Right. So I've never done a hard drug in my life.
That was going to be my next question.
Because I know.
Right.
I know. I know I better not never touch no coke. I've been in parties and found coke on the floor. Somebody dropped it. Somebody is this belong to somebody, or somebody do this, help somebody.
Right.
Because I ain't want it. I don't even taking it with me. I ain't putting it in my pocket.
Right.
So was it the social?
Even in high school, people were doing coke.
You were very young when you started, so I'm about to ask you a question about how you were socialized, but you were so young, I'm not sure exactly the socialization process is.
I'm an only child. Most of my time as a young kid was alone. I was a latchkey child. My mother, worked a few jobs. I had a shoestring around my neck with the key and go home. I have TV dinners before processed food was processed food, and before we realized that processed food was bad for us, but it wasn't that bad then, right?
Right.
Swanson's Hungry Man Dinner actually had food in it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Burgers, McDonald's and all that stuff back when we were kids actually was real food. Now they're experimenting with like plastics and foam. But I was alone, always alone. And when I did get friends when I was a kid, when I was younger, it was more strategic and political, because I lived in a very violent place. Now, I lived in Essex County, New Jersey, so Newark was our epicenter. And I just lived in a place where you really needed alliances. Right. So most of my friendships were kind of built around the fact that if I got into trouble, I needed some help, But other than that, in terms of like socializing and chilling, I'd rather be alone.
But you got the don't do hardcore drugs message.
Do not do hardcore
but not
drugs.
The maybe not also drink message. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
And even with not drinking, I
out.
still love the idea of it. Even us talking, it doesn't make me want to go out and get a glass of Basil Hayden or whatever. But
I can't quite make that claim.
but as I think about it, I'm like, yo, that's the. You know what whiskey means?
What?
It comes from the word joie de vivre. So most places, like, bourbon is named after Bourbon County, Kentucky, and cognac is named after the region in France. Whiskey means eau de vie, is a French word. It means the water of life. And
Damn.
I thought it was the most fitting thing when I learned that, because
Whiskey means
because
the
that
water
was
of
that deal.
life.
But perfect moderation escapes you. And I always got back to that point of stopping. Just like I learned to just stop cold turkey. Terrible the first day to stop cold turkey. But I learned to just do that. A week or two go by and I start getting back to it. But I got it now. Don't drink in the morning. If you go out, just have one drink, have a drink, unless it's a really special circumstance, maybe two. You know, you come on all these rules.
Right.
And then before you know it,
You back
you're
at
drinking
it.
all day, every day.
And I think
So, yo.
the difference.
And nobody can tell. So there ain't nobody to tell you.
Right.
I'm still.
And because you're a person that likes your solitude.
Yeah. It's not a lot of people around me.
Right,
and
right.
then when I would go around people, they would probably either, had their own things going on, whether it's drinking or weeded out of their mind, or it's just heavily weeded. Because I don't want none of my friends to feel crazy when I say weeded out. They're not weeded out of their mind, but they're copious.
right.
They're copiously sedated.
And I think that also the difference between hard drugs and alcohol. I mean, alcohol is it's a legal drug. It's a legal drug.
Right.
And alcohol is the only drug that if you say, like yourself, you don't drink. So if you say you don't drink, the first thing people are like, why
Why?
not? What's wrong with you?
Why?
But you don't ask that about any other drink. Why don't you drink?
Yeah. Oh, you're asking me.
Yeah,
this
now I'm asking you why don't you drink?
Why do you drink?
Because when you
Can't do that.
yeah, you told us.
Yes, I can.
You told us
Why
that
do you
that's
I
your
can give you a
response.
list of that. But
But
All his friends.
why?
But
Yeah.
and I ask not in that what's wrong
Right,
with you,
right.
but in a world where this is a culture of drinking.
And my
Yeah.
parents don't. My mother drinks a little. My father doesn't drink at all. He has diabetes, but he doesn't really drink at all. He keeps it in his
Yeah.
house. Doesn't drink it. I admire people. I've always admired people who didn't drink. And I've always thought that the people who didn't drink didn't need to. And generally they do things. And that's a positive and a negative, because generally they do things. And I'm like, yeah, they don't need to drink. They're good the way they are.
Get out of my head, sir.
They're good the way they are.
A lot to be said there, because I have so many questions for you, but since y'all asked me the question,
It's a conversation.
yeah.
And there's a famous quote that a man drinks to entertain his fools.
So I don't drink because, well, a lot of it has to do with just the family that I came from. I never saw my parents drink.
That's what I was trying to say a second ago. My mother, as a kid, I never seen them.
Yeah, I never saw them drink. Then when I would see people drink, I would try to figure. I'm always on high in terms of life, in terms of just being excited, in terms of my energy, in terms of. So I would meet people who would drink, and they would either need it to bring themselves down or to get themselves high. And I just never saw a reason for me. It didn't fit in with what I needed to do with my personality in order to make myself feel more socially
Right, that's what I
to be a
meant.
part of the
That's what I
a
meant, yeah.
conversation.
People who don't drink, I found they don't need.
Yeah, it
And
just
I'm happy that they don't, because I think if you drank, it would be terrible.
it would be terrible.
You've never drank. You never had a sip of alcohol.
I've never had a sip of alcohol. Even during communion, I got the grape. There was really and here's the other thing. There's so many. Back to your point, that we are so addicted to so many other things anyway. Let's start with sugar.
Yeah, but see, and that's just okay. Two things. Number one,
Yeah.
I knew a guy whose father passed away, and his thing about his father, he never drank a day in his life. And my first thought was, so he never lived. You know, that was the first thing.
That came.
And what was the second thing? What would you say?
So if we start with sugar, there's so many things that are already addictive.
But that's just it. Like I don't have a big sugar thing. That was when you first told me about the subject. That was the first thing that came to my mind, is how I stop everything.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had beef since I was a teenager. I haven't had chicken or turkey, since I was a teenager.
I'm over here going through.
I haven't drank a soda since I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Ice cream, I'm not against it. I don't have a problem. I would eat it. I actually eat ice cream. I can't remember the last time I had ice cream. It's been over a year. You know what I mean? And years could go by and I wouldn't think about it.
Right.
But liquor, that was different. That was the one thing. I mean, I could be sexually abstinent and be cool sometimes in life. I have been. But the idea, you know, and this is the thing that you brought to mind was Carrie Fisher, who was Princess Leia in Star Wars. When she was after the movie, they said she lost her mind, whatever. She started, just kind of roaming around the world and all this stuff, and roaming in people's neighborhoods, and like, yo, she's famous, she can't do this. And they asked her at some point when she got her life back, got stuff back together, why did you drink anyway? And she said, I drink so that I can feel like the rest of y'all seem to feel. And I'm like, yo.
Sheesh.
And it was like always like, all right, well, thank God for this creation because it helps me talk to people. It helps me be around somebody who doesn't like to be around people. At least with some drinks, I can tolerate it. So it was like that. And the quitting, or I just tell people, and I tell myself, I just am on an indefinite hiatus.
Sure.
However, but I've never said that before. But in the past, I've always been like, I ain't quitting. I ain't never quitting. I'm 10 toes down.
There's also a dynamic that when you go out with people who do drink,
Not a problem no more.
well, not you personally, but I'm glad.
I'm saying I do go out. I do.
Your experience
Like,
your experience with
the other
going
night.
out.
Last other night, I'm saying I buy drinks for people.
Yes,
I'm saying I do.
But
I'm
when I go out, if I'm with people who do drink, I don't know the version that I'm getting. Like, I'm not really speaking to who I'm speaking to right now. I'm speaking to because you're drunk.
You see if they're drinking.
If they're drinking. So if I'm the only, well, you get looser, you do, so that now it's a totally different experience because that person who I've known in that space, and now you've had, I don't know, 5 drinks. Well, now you're an absolute. Our dynamic is you're a new person for me in terms of interaction.
I can see that.
That's all.
I think
and that's very trying.
I feel it now. Like I told y'all, I'm out with friends and there's talking and they're drinking, and I'm like, he wouldn't have said that.
That's right.
Right.
Who's that?
So there's also a difference, and I think Weusi was trying to get to it. There's also a difference between being drunk and drinking. Like
I'm a social drinker.
Yeah.
Like I don't really drink. Like I got alcohol at the house, but I'm not really drinking. Mm-hmm. Like every now and then, I'll have something. You know what I mean?
What you sipping on?
Right now, I'm doing this gin.
What kind? That was the solution to me at one point, to just drink gin, the highest, like botanist and all that stuff.
Like
what was it, 42 monkeys or something? Like I was drinking like
monkeys,
I was drinking like the highest quality gin because I was like, but it's got all the herbs and spices in it. It's really healthy for you.
This Flora Adora Hendrix. It's one of their special blends. So that's sort of what I've been sipping on.
But you're a social drinker.
But I'm a social drinker. Like, so I'm not like running around sloppy or you know what I mean, and all that stuff. But it's sort of a tool to engage, not necessarily for me to be drunk or even to be
engage. What though?
But just as a talking point. But I also go.
As a talking point to talk about what?
Just to have something
You're
in my
talking
hand.
right now.
I have a daughter. One of my daughters doesn't drink.
Yeah.
I dig it when people don't drink, and like I said, I always feel like the people who generally have told me that they don't drink, I've always felt like it's good because I don't think they need to. But there are people who sometimes it seems like it could help them.
Yeah.
And somebody was like, yo, I wonder what you would be like sober, like.
But even
I used to say nobody's ever seen me.
Like I don't drink to be I don't need it to interact with people. You know what I mean?
So let me ask you
like,
this.
Part of it is like
that's right. Like you keep.
I like the taste. Some stuff.
I have a friend who used to say I like the taste, and then he'd fall off bar stool. Like,
he really liked the taste.
Yeah, like you can't just say he is like, no, I'm just tired. No, being tired people don't fall off bar stools.
And I know how this must seem because it would be like us all eating burgers, and then here comes Lane, our executive producer, sits down eating, talking about. I'm a vegan. Like I know that sometimes it will make people feel like,
I'm thinking of it a different way. I'm seeing him sitting there with some gin and you sitting there with a burger,
Uh-huh.
and you not realizing that burger itself is poison.
Right. Now that's another way to say. That's another way to look at it too.
And then so many people wished I stopped drinking, and this isn't about Will. This is about a lot of other people. They're not here.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I remember so many people who were like, you need to stop. Richard Call used to talk to me about drinking from the New Year weekend. So
Miguel?
not the Miguels, because it was Miguel Algarin and Miguel Pinheiro. Yeah,
Right.
Miguel Algarin hated my drink. Hated it, I think I got banned from the New Year. but I'm just allegedly banned. But
So they say. Right.
what's the other brother? Super famous. I don't know why it's leaving my. I think he taught at Mega Evers, Spanish poet.
Oh, it was he'll be at the
Was it Louis?
the
or was it
festival.
Keys Rivera, was it? Is it Louis Keys Rivera? I think that's it.
He used to come to the festival.
But
I
yeah,
know
he
that
was on that poetry too. Older gentleman with the long white beard and everything. But I remember him sitting there talking to me about Pinheiro. So Pinheiro started the New York Cafe, which is like the mecca for performance poetry.
Yeah.
And he would talk to me about Pinheiro, but I would know that he's talking about me. And he'd be like, I used to hate how much he drank. I'm sitting there with a drink.
Wow.
He'd be like, I used to hate how much Pinheiro drank. Yeah. He'd be like, yeah, and then you can smell it coming from his pores. I'm like,
Sounds
you know,
Right.
yeah.
I was at an airport layover once, and there were a bunch of people that got together, didn't know who they were. We were just on different flights because there was some bad weather. So we all just happened to be there. We all sat together. Didn't really know who they were again. And so, but they all started drinking. And so they couldn't understand. Mind you, since I didn't know them, they were just really intrigued. Like, why don't you drink? Why don't you drink? Why? I mean, it just got to be this thing. And that's where I came up with the response of, why do you drink? Because I went to the ladies' room and my friend followed me there. She said, they all want to know, are you recovering alcoholic? They all want to know, did your parents drink? They needed a reason.
Understand.
And they did not. It was like a totally different language.
That had been a problem for me. I went to business school, right? I studied finance. And one of the things they taught us in business school was, if you don't drink in business events, people will wonder what's wrong with
question
you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it was like you always need to be able to drink a little. That's what they told us. It's only now, decades later, now that I'm thinking, I don't care what they think.
Right. And it's been like that in the art circles, you know what I mean, in creative circles. Like, if you don't at least drink,
Yeah.
you kind of looked around as suspect.
Like, what's up with him? Yeah.
Yeah,
And I don't,
you know what I mean?
I don't care anymore because what I can't afford to do is two things. I can't afford to be goofy. I can't afford people to be like looking at me thinking they could take advantage of me because I had a few drinks.
Right.
And I know a lot of people who have never drank in their life, and they make their life by taking advantage of people who drink.
Yep.
People who are photographers, and giving people copious quantities of liquor so they can get better pictures, and then they keep the pictures. And who knows? You know the word compromise.
Compromat?
Yeah.
No.
That is the most powerful, important word that so many people don't seem to know. It's the weirdest thing to me.
Compromise.
Let me know.
Compromise. To me, all of this is about, so all of the whole Puffy stuff and the Donald Trump stuff and all it is about that, and compromise is, it's taking receipts, pictures, videos
Oh, right, yeah.
of people.
Yeah.
Okay.
For blackmail, for evidence, to hold a card.
Yo, poets be having names and
But
words
I mean,
for
it's
like
such
everything.
an important word and such
But,
an
like,
apropos
you be
word
knowing.
for what goes
Yeah.
on in the world. Like, you think Donald Trump would be as powerful without compromise, without having markers over people's heads? You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, it's such an important word.
It is.
Did you ever go to rehab?
No, should I? Are you trying to tell me something? Do I seem-
No, but since you said that you stopped drinking in May, that there seems to be some efforts, and maybe this not being your first time, to stop drinking.
Oh, no, it's the first time of me saying this is the indefinite hiatus.
Yeah.
You never
You
tried.
said, you said he
never-
stopped before.
I've
that's what I'm
not
saying. You
drank.
said-
Yeah,
You tried
so
before,
let me be
though,
clear.
right?
No, I wasn't trying to stop.
Okay.
I was never trying to stop.
Right.
I was always just trying to take a break. Now I'm not trying to take a break.
I see.
Yeah, I was always just taking a break. I was always going to get right back to it. And in fact, I didn't tell you that I stopped. And when I told you, I thought we were going to do it. I was going to tell you on camera. But since we talked about it earlier,
Right, yeah.
I always felt like there was the feeling in your heart or anyone else's heart would be like betrayal. You know, like I thought we had a pact. You know what I mean?
That's
Nah.
You mean because
Because
we
you
talked
do
about
drink.
what the con was? What
No,
the,
because you still do.
you do, right?
And it's like,
Yeah,
so,
like,
so you ain't in
okay,
the club?
so we
Oh,
can't
you ain't
come
in the
go have a
club
drink.
now?
Right.
You ain't in the
Right.
club? And I have a friend that I'm hanging out with the other night, and the same thing. So now he's watching me drink all these 0.0 alcohol
Right,
beers.
right.
And he's just looking at me, shaking his head. You know what I mean? Because he's drinking mad beers all the time.
Right. So people. So the other night, I go out
You want to know why I
With a-
drink zero alcohol?
with a friend, all right, and we've had drinks together. He stopped drinking, all right. So he's having a no alcohol beer, and I'm like, I have one with you, right? No issues. And I go back to the bar and I'm like, you know what? I kind of just want to get me like a little something. In the back of my mind, I hear him saying, yo, because I'm thinking like, yo, maybe I'll get me, a gin with the Floridora, just something like, he's like, oh, you gonna go get one of them girly drinks, right?
That was all you.
Right,
He ain't got nothing to do with this. That was all you.
right. But
Sound like you're trying to escalate yourself.
so the idea of the other person's influence, right? Even when I'm trying to support them, right? But I'm sort of caught up in ideas of what other people's expectations of me are still, even when like it's all twisted and turned and I'm still stuck here with myself and not really wanting to get a cranberry and Sprite, right? But also thinking about, just a Jack and Ginger, something, you know what I mean? And just the influence of other people.
But is everything all right afterwards? Like, after you have the Jack and Ginger, are you like, now life is good?
No, I'm not like now life is good. I'm just like,
So that was my
I like
my
this. I just want
problem.
to
That was
taste.
my problem. The realization that wherever is troubling me wasn't being solved. I don't know that it ever was. I'm assuming at younger stages of my life when my metabolism worked different.
Yeah.
I metabolized it differently. I mean, there's a lot of things starting from this last album when I drank a whole lot while I was making it. And I'm like, a lot of that's the ideas I would not have come up with sober. Unfortunately, I hate to
So
say
that's
that.
that's a whole nother.
Yeah, I hate to say that,
Sure.
but
Aspect
it's
of-
the truth that there are a lot of things that happen throughout that. I flew to LA 2 times to work on an album, which I don't think that's a rational decision. You know what I mean? But with drinking, it just made perfect sense, and I would just go back to LA to the studio and work on it again, even though there's studios in Atlanta, and there are things that came out of that could not have happened had I not done it.
Right.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, I hear you.
I drink the zero alcohol because beers. I used to drink the liquor, but it's not. But the beers, I do it because the same thing we said before. You sometimes you do like the taste, and I do like the taste. So I drink that, and I'm not drinking it imagining that I'm drinking something alcoholic. I don't want to be goofy.
Right.
I don't want people looking at me like, this silly dude. He is age wrong. And I've heard 20 years ago, 15 years ago, these kids put together a poem about me and drinking. I seen, there used to be a time when on social media you could search your name and people who weren't even talking to you, you could find what they said about you on their
Right, right.
page. And I used to do that all the time. People would be like, yo, I met him and I had so much regard for him, but then, I realized
Do you feel like the
What they
pressure?
realize.
that he, at the time, he's like, he drinks too much, whatever. Back then.
And
that's
what were they
people
saying in the poem? What did they write about you?
in that poem, they
Yeah.
were saying that I probably never had the support, that I needed coming up. That was what the poem was about. It was about coming up and having to find your own way and finding some sort of crutch to help you limp along because there was nobody to help you, function in the way that other people function. I just thought I liked alcohol,
Did you
and premium alcohol. Not, I've had bouts with the cheap stuff, and I've had some terrible experiences.
Did you see yourself in those words that they wrote?
Yes. I thought, and I think this a lot about music, dance, movies, any art that's done right. It didn't come from you. Anytime I see art done perfectly, it's like Miles Davis said, you music's already there. You just, play the notes that are missing. You know what I mean? And I just was like, how could they know me? Because when I heard the poem, it sounded like me. How could these children know me?
Do you feel like
I believe in Akashic Files. Do y'all know what that is?
No.
Everything that happens in this existence is stored almost like on a data drive, like in a data center in the universe. It's
The universe,
huge
right.
Data center.
And what'd you call it?
The Akashic Files.
The Akashic.
Stores everything that
All
occurs. And I believe people can pull from it, and I think that's where the best art comes from.
Say that word, spell it.
Akashic, Akashic. You've seen it. You
Akashic,
probably
yes.
think is it, you know,
Do you
it's kind
feel
of like
like-
compromise. These words, y'all. You
You got to quote the dictionary, bro.
Yo, do you
That's
feel
all
like,
right.
because you're like an internationally acclaimed poet.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Like,
This is great.
It's facts. It's
But
facts.
you know, it's facts, you know what I mean?
Facts.
do you
Buttering
feel
me up.
like but do you feel like there was pressure to did that cause the pressure that fed the drinking?
Man, look, I don't know that a lot of my movements would have been possible. I don't know that a lot of my movements would have been possible sober. I don't know that was a sober mind thinking, get a flight to London with some CDs and see how it goes.
Right.
With no, I remember leaving the airport looking at parks. You know, I left the airport. I'm looking at trying to figure out what park I would have to sleep in if it didn't go my way. You know what I mean?
Right. Would you do that sober? What a sober?
When
sober-
I do that, and a lot of the things I've done, some wild things, man. Some wild things. When I take those things back, no. Some of the best memories of my life, which were
You
precipitated.
are not doing well for people who are like, don't do drugs. Look at you.
Yo.
I mean, your journey is kind of dotted with like a lot of value that you're assigning to it, which I find really interesting.
What I was going to tell him, and you just reminded me, I used to like go to, say, Chicago, or let's keep it at Chicago for now, right? I'd sleep on the train, on the red line and the blue line, because those two lines ran all night. I think there was a yellow and a green, but they stopped at some point. The red and the blue all night long, you know. And I would do that. I would sleep on it. And in my mind, I'm thinking, as long as I've got, at the time, a pint of E&J or something, you know, I'm good for the night. You know, that's how I was thinking. You know, I wasn't worried about eating. I wasn't worried about nothing. I'm just good for the night. And I used to travel around the country.
I was about to say.
With that thought pattern. And I used to set up in a hotel. I'd get to someplace and set up a bar in the hotel. You know what I mean? So I go to the hotel. I mean, I get to a place, go to the liquor store, get some Hennessy, some vodka, some beers, some wine, you know, and I'd set it all up in my hotel room. And I would never want to leave. So if I was doing a conference, you would only see me out of my room for a workshop that I had to give or a performance. Mm-hmm. I was not hanging out. I wasn't going to see nobody else. I was in my room. I might be reading a book. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And then I started like watching these movies. So Truman Capote wrote In Cold Blood and Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yes.
And he did the same thing. I was watching the movie. He would
And
go
he's
to
like,
these hotels
right.
and set up, you know. And I had heard that Baldwin used to do the same thing. And I'm like, yo.
Right.
So when you came out, I told you I was looking at Reefer Madness. Right before I was looking at Reefer Madness,
Yes.
I was looking at Baldwin and his cause of death, you know, and it was related, you know, to the drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at Kerouac and so on and so forth. But the same thing with the Truman Capote. I was like, see, that's how I do. What's so different? And then at the end of the movie, they was like, he died of alcohol-related illnesses. I'm like,
How many days were you traveling? Like
all the time.
like
Then I didn't live anywhere. I lived on the road. I lived in the Philadelphia 30th Street station. I lived in New York Penn Station. I lived in Atlanta Airport. I used to do a show in Atlanta on a Monday and tell them to take me to the airport, even though I had a show in Atlanta on Tuesday, because that was where I slept.
Do you have children?
Yeah.
So when you think of, okay, what's the message I want to give them about drinking? What is it?
I didn't want to be pejorative. I was like, oh, that sounds like a question that only somebody who doesn't drink would ask you. But
That's all right, because that's
I didn't want to, it's cool. It's cool. I never did a lot of drinking in front of them, but people are mean, and being that people are mean, I assume that people around them, family members, like, yo, your father, man, that mug, So I assume people told them. But like I said, one of my children doesn't drink at all. One of them barely drinks these days, it appears, and the other one is going. He's in a phase. He's 21. So
and I asked you because it seems like you would have a really good answer and have solid
a
information.
good answer for my children.
For anybody's, actually.
Well, that's what I've been trying to do since I've been sitting here, but you pointed out that I'm not doing that great a job because for as many things and reasons why I'm saying I don't, I'm telling good things that happened because I did, but they happened when they happened, and they were phases, and you got to move from one phase to the other.
Yeah.
Right.
A friend of mine was telling me, like, what if alcohol, and people have said that, like, what if it doesn't work for you anymore the way that it used to?
Alcohol,
What if it actually used to work for you, when you were 20 and when you were 30? But now that you're older, what if it doesn't really work for you? And then a friend told me the other day, there are other modalities. There are other ways of coming to where you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
And with that understanding and the understanding that alcohol was no longer working, it wasn't making me happy.
And your lifestyle's changed different. You're not on the road like you were before.
Right. Yeah. So I don't need to.
So
I
like,
I didn't need that to get through the night.
So this is questions. We all here to figure out how to answer.
One thing I skipped with y'all was telling y'all that I used to miss time. So so I've never been the type of person that stumbled or was violent. I didn't but talk out of turn with my woman or anything like that. But I'd miss time. A day would go by and I didn't remember that day. And I'm not even talking about blackout. I'm just saying that I would just miss time. And it got to the point sometimes where I would miss weeks. Right? Like, say, for instance, I was putting on something or I'm supposed to do a podcast like this. And this is, I'm just speaking specifically of something I was supposed to do years ago.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to promote it. And the next thing I know, I look up and it's tomorrow. I never even got around to really promoting the thing. But that was, because I was so busy and was drinking.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so why do you drink?
And at 30 you began.
Yeah, so I didn't start drinking till I was like 30.
Yeah, all right, so what made you drink at 30?
One, I felt like I was being judgmental of people that were drinking.
Sound familiar?
But I hadn't had.
I hear you. Yeah.
But I hadn't had the experience to make any real. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
Not like I need to.
Why do you do it now?
Because sometimes I like the taste of it.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, sometimes it's sort of just something to have in my hand, social engagements, and sometimes, like I said, I carry a cranberry and Sprite, or just something in my hand. I drink now because I want to, and I think that's kind of the root of it, right? It's not. Doesn't feel like it's being detrimental to my health in any other way than, well, more detrimental than some other things that I'm doing. I mean,
yeah,
Yeah,
and that's the other side of it. I don't want to. If I wanted to, I would.
Yeah.
I don't want to. It's for what I need to do and the amount of focus I require right now. It wouldn't be detrimental for me right now. Would I go back to it? If there's some type of schism in my life, like if I buy a castle, I'll start drinking again.
I guess I'm thinking about it in terms of just the Black community on a whole, right? Now, alcoholism, I mean, white, Black, across the board, it affects people. You dive into opioids, there's a whole cannabis argument. There's so many things that you can talk about in and around addictions. Why are you laughing?
Because I wanted to say something, but I was like, my wife going to see this. At some point, she's going to be mad as hell. Because I was like, I'm talking to someone. I was like, she's talking. One time I was sitting we were at an event, and this dude got on stage. He's like 20-something years old.
Yeah.
He was like, I studied family psychology and so on and so forth. And if any of y'all are having problems with your families, I'm open to, bringing y'all into my office and having a discussion and trying to get you some solutions in life.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, we all like 40, 50 some years old, and this dude is 20 some years old. It's like, yo, you don't even know life, big. You have no idea. You're going to be counseling people about correcting things that you haven't even encountered. You know what I mean? So when you were talking about what you said, my first outburst, and if my wife hears this, forgive me, but it's just what came to mind. I was like, do you have any idea the amount of amazing sex I've had drinking? in all over the world? Like, that never would have happened if I was sober?
No, I don't have any idea.
Yeah, of course not. Of course not. And because it was drinking, I probably don't have an idea either because, right?
Yeah.
I probably was blacked out for half of it.
Yeah, it just
But there's some great memories.
It just seems like we could get insight from you about.
I want to give it. So ask me the question.
Ask you that question. All right.
What's that question?
Here's the question. So, for that parent that's at home that is wondering about their child, whether or not, and I'll just stick with alcohol since you talked, you didn't do hardcore drugs. If they're wondering about their child and whether or not they're indulging, and they're reading the diaries and they're combing through and they're looking through, their room, they're trying to figure out who they are because there's so many parts of young people's lives. Let's make it 14-year-old that is so secret. Some parents will never know until it's way too late. So with all of your insight.
Do you have children?
I do not. I have 2 stepchildren. So with all of your insight, what would you tell that parent to figure out and maybe even fill that void? Because, all this don't say no, that's not going to work. You got to give somebody something to say yes to if you got to, you know what I mean? If there's going to be that void that's left. So that really is my question.
I think there's a lot to be said at the age I'm at now. If I could go back, I think I've come to realize how important it might have been to been more particular about injecting myself into the friends that my children had and I used to write it down. Like in the age of cell phones, I used to take notes when they would tell me about their friends, but I didn't stay on top of it because I think that might be the bigger danger when it comes to something like that.
Peer pressure?
Yeah, peer pressure or even just association. So you got friends that drink or smoke, but they ain't asking you to drink or smoke, but you just you're around them all the time. So there's no peer pressure, but just by association, you kind of start doing what they're doing. It's nice, the idea that it's just a phase, but it's not always a phase. Like some people ruin their whole life very early on. How do you stop the person? They usually say that the way you stop somebody is you let them bottom on their own, but that could be dangerous.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm keeping your child busy and paying more attention to the friends that your child has, but there's no solution because you can't. My mother had no idea.
And there's no prediction. There's no.
My mother. We used to take a friend of mine to high school. She would be like, "Yo, how come you don't have more friends like him? He used to wear like the polo outfits and always nicely capping everything. You know what I mean?" And she was like, "Yo, this dude was the biggest drug dealer in the county." Right. And she's like, "Why not more friends like him?" So you don't know. There's no way you can know. She could not have known that.
Right.
That dude could have gave me enough drugs to overdose on any given day.
Right. Just hanging out.
And I've known people who've done crack and coke and heroin and seen normal.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've known people who've done hard drugs and seen normal. Who are teachers or lawyers or,
When you were growing up not drinking, did your friends drink? Did you hang around people who drank and you just didn't?
No. Mm-mm. And I'm trying to think, going to parties and all that, there would be people who drank, but I just didn't. Yep.
But in terms of your circle of people,
No, they didn't really drink.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I turned it into a lifestyle at some point, so it was terrible. I mean, in that way. Mm-hmm. Like the whole, back in the days before 911, we would bring fifths of liquor on the plane, Yeah. After 911, we would put the little 50 milliliter bottles in the plastic. So we ain't bring no lotion. Because there's no room. There's no room for lotion, right? You only get to bring the little, the bag, and everything had to be 3 ounces. And And then you go to the airport, you put it under the bag, and then you go to the first store you see, and you buy some apple juice or some cranberry juice, and you drink it, and then you go, somewhere and just put your bottles in there, and that's your trip. Mm-hmm. And you just feel like you're mellow.
Did you grow up around cats who were drinking, doing whatever?
Yeah. Like, we weren't drinking to get drunk. I just grew up liking the taste of alcohol.
Right.
And there were self-imposed boundaries that I had. Like, I think I was very fortunate in terms of, we shot Cosby in New York, so I didn't grow up in Hollywood. Other shows weren't shooting in New York, so my friends were not other actors from other shows. My friends were real people. They were in the real world.
Yeah.
And because I was keenly aware of the impact that Cosby had on
his image
globally, not so much his image, the image of the show, like the impact of what the show was having on white America, on Black America, globally. So when I walked,
so you
through
saved
life,
us all then.
What I'm saying. So like when I walked through life, I knew that I was not just representing my mother and my father. Right,
Big,
I was representing Mr. Cosby, but I was also representing everything that show stood for. Yeah. So it allowed me to partake in my vices with a certain level of responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. So it's why I go back to when I think about the why we drink, and again the different levels, because you can get to a point where you're drinking, again, you're not getting drunk. You're not coming out of who you are,
right?
But there's a consistency, and I know a lot of people where there's a consistency with which they're drinking, and even myself included. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily think about the consistency because you're not getting drunk. You're not shirking your responsibilities, and again, it's different from being a functional alcoholic or whatever your thing is, but we're talking about alcohol. So it's not about being a functioning alcoholic. It's, I growing up, my biggest concern about drinking was the empty calories. So there's also kind of a vanity perspective of the level I'm drinking, because if I'm trying to
work out,
you got press. I remember one time we were hanging out one night, and you were like, "Oh man, my face is
right.
My face has got." Because I guess you drinking and
alcohol bloats me.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So if I got a press run, I'm like, all right, I got to stop drinking because I got to get my.
That was a problem for me too. The shows, like having to try out for major shows.
Right.
And then somebody asked me to do a show, and I'm like, oh man, when do I have to stop drinking? What day? All right, I got to get. I need a start before the start. Stuff like that. Every time you say the word drunk, I keep thinking about how relative the term drunk is.
Yeah.
So you're not drunk.
When you say function drunk, in my head I'm thinking, what does that look like? Actually?
And then you don't. Somebody don't like. I can go to a spot, drink, give a killer performance. Everybody, love me afterwards. Jump in the car, drive home with no issue.
Yeah, word.
But was I drunk?
Word.
I've been drinking all week. Was I drunk?
Right.
Like, would you pass it if the police would have pulled you? Would you pass the test? Right? No.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And that was and that's another thing in terms of reasons why not to drink. I was always concerned with the fact that even though I did not think that in drinking I was going to cause any accidents, because I tended to really focus, to really be focused, especially like in dangerous situations. So I was focused, but I always wondered what happens when somebody hits me, and then I smell like.
Right, and then they blame it on you.
And I can't pass a breathalyzer. I didn't cause it, but I was drinking. You know what I mean? Yeah. And if somebody died, then you got to take that with you for the rest of your life, even though you may not have been at fault, but because of what was in your body. You know what I mean?
That's a L you got to take. Yeah.
So May, right?
May 20, yeah.
How's it going?
Great. I don't think about it. I got drinks at home. I still got Basil Hayden at the house. I got I have beer because I buy beer for my friends. So there's beer in my car right now. You know what I mean? But I don't drink it. I just give it to them when I see them.
And so for me, it's a conscious decision. Like when we were at Bucheco the other night, like, you know, that's where we have our jam sessions, and, you know, I always have a drink there because that's, you know, it's part of, we're doing the show, so, you know, you have a drink. It's part of the culture. And the times that I haven't, it's been like a real conscious. I think one time I was going to go and, like, yeah, I'm not going to drink, you know. And then of course, you know, the band's drinking, and then okay, well, I'm having one drink. Whereas the times were, so because I know that, so when I go and I'm making sure, okay, you know what, I'm definitely not going to drink. So as you said, if you say no to something, what do you say yes to?
Right.
So I rock kombucha is my friend. Right. So I can rock kombucha and be around people who are drinking, and I'm drinking my kombucha and I'm cool because I realize that part of the drinking is just habit. Like you're in the spot.
Somebody told me that. Yeah.
You know, it's everybody got a drink in hand. You're used to having a drink in your hand. But what I found out is a bottle of water or a bottle of kombucha still does the same thing, which is different. I'm sorry, which is different from. So part of it is habitual, but I also like the taste of alcohol.
I do too.
So it's a conscious decision. Like, okay, I'm going to drink this kombucha instead of the alcohol. So I may still, kind of wish I had that drink, but I'm on a flavor kombucha that I really like.
Right.
So I'm cool.
So that goes back to that quote, and it kind of answers the question you asked me.
Yeah.
Whereas total abstinence is easier than perfect moderation. So he's discussing moderation. I'm pretty abstinent right now. I don't touch any alcohol. I'm not drinking any alcohol. It's very easy. If you're not drinking, it's very easy not to drink. Yeah. But if you're dipping your toe in the water every once in a while, that's when it becomes complicated.
Yeah.
When you're trying to figure out that perfect moderation.
What were you going to say? What were you going to say?
So back in the day when I wasn't drinking, I'd be on the block with my boys, and they'd have like their 40s in a brown bag. I have a thing of apple juice in a brown bag. They be turning theirs up.
Yeah.
I turn mine up. Talking shit, whatever, whoop-de-whoop, you know what I mean?
Yeah. We just did that. We made a video for a poem of mine called "The Old Me," and that's exactly what we did. Put like some apple juice in a wine in a whiskey glass, and I just sip that.
Yeah.
We have this. We have this crew called the Fat Black Frat, and it was me. It was Milk D and Gizmo from Audio Tool. It was Light, MC Light, Corey Glover,
wow.
My man Guy Rote, Big Wigs, and we were like the Fat Black Frat, and we did a video we did an Audio Tool video. I'm forgetting the name of it. But we were like on a corner, and I had a corner with I was on a corner with a half gallon of milk. Like it was a 40, right? But it still felt so good. Like we're like I'm in it. Like I'm mean grilling and everything while I'm drinking my half gallon.
That's dope.
But for me, it settled that. Yeah. It's not a 40, but it's but I'm still
on the block,
man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said you added some clue to it.
He made me laugh because he said Milk D and Gizmo from the Audio Tool, and I was like, "Is there another Milk D and Gizmo?" I was like, "What if he had said, yo, Milk D and Gizmo, but not the ones from the Audio Tool, another one."
But some of our listeners may not be as familiar.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that helps them though to tell them they were from the Audio Tool.
You remind me of the story, and I used to work with someone.
Not low, slow.
And he used to be overweight. He used to be about 400 pounds. And he was slim like you. He was maybe even slimmer. And I couldn't see, wow, you used to be that big. They showed the before picture long before Ozempic. He did it on his own. And I said, well, how did you do it? He was Spanish. He said, ferme la bouche. And I said, may I speak Spanish, such a French. But that means shut your mouth. And it reminds me of what you say. He just never tasted the food. He never got the sugar on his mouth to get him started. And that sounds like what you're saying. And that just as long as you don't dip your feet into it, you're fine. You're just a complete
You don't think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, and my wife has been sober for over 3 years now. And, I kept mad alcohol and the best alcohol. Like even when I was drinking, if you had Johnny Walker Red, you didn't have to worry about me drinking it.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You can have cases of it in your house.
Yeah.
Wouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like the stuff that I had, like the premium, real good stuff it's always been around, but she don't touch it. And she doesn't think about it. But that's what I mean. Like I went to the hiatus coyote thing a week ago, and got some cranberry and club soda, and everybody else around me was drinking, and I was just as happy as I had the milk on the corner.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just got that.
Yeah.
Milk tea, and you were drinking milk. Yeah.
The highest coyote show. You don't need nothing.
Yeah,
That's a great show.
even though I don't think they did Nakamura, but that was cool.
They didn't do it?
I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, this is our second batch of recording these episodes, and
Did this meander?
It's conversation. So that's the thing. These podcasts are really their conversations. We do a couple of the episodes without a guest, and we just talk. So
Can I introduce something then?
Okay.
You sure can.
When I read what came to me in terms of what we were going to discuss, it did bring up something interesting because you mentioned talking about drinking, and the topic, the scope of what we were going to discuss kind of delved into drugs. And I don't know if I kind of deaded it by saying I never did a hard drug, because I never have. And, and the reason I didn't do it wasn't because of judgment. It was because I knew that because of the type of person I am, it would get bad. I couldn't do that, in any type of moderate way. But I just started thinking about things because our whole life they talked to us about like the Rockefeller laws, and they were saying that was why black people were going to jail at a higher percentage than white people. But in my looking at it, which I really started looking at it to a little bit more because of the show, I was saying, okay, well, the Rockefeller laws, that was in the 30s. That really has nothing that was heroin, and heroin was what a lot of the jazz artists were doing. They were doing heroin and converting to Islam. So Art Blakey became, Buhena, but what they were talking about was something that happened in 1986, which was the ADAA, which is the Anti-Drug Abuse Act. And in that ADAA is and it concerns us because it came about with hip hop, right? So in 86 is when Len Bias died,
right,
from crack. When he was drafted, right? He was from Maryland. And in that same year, that's when the American Drug Abuse Act passed, which Biden authored, right? He authored pretty much every criminal policy of our lifetime, right? But in that act is what people are talking about, that 555.
Right.
Right? If you've got 5 grams of crack, you might as well have 500 grams of coke, because either way, you go to jail for 5 years. 5 grams ain't nothing. Right?
Right.
So you got a half a key, and you go into jail with somebody that pretty much just has some crack residue on them, And watching it and watching how hip hop promoted it, I've always been curious. And the theme comes out in poems, but not really directly. When I was younger, I'm from New Jersey, from the Newark area, born in Newark.
So this is Jersey.
But that whole situation around like when those MCs were coming up, and people were talking about like companies like, let's say Phillies or White Owl, I don't know which, but giving money to the hood and giving free packages to the hood,
promo,
and particularly the rappers, giving them money to mention this in my, mention White Owl, mention Philly, mention mention Old English, so just that idea of how it came to us and how it has escalated, the drugs,
and now onto the opioids,
and how it puts us in jail. So they were saying like the ADA, there was an 11% discrepancy. After the ADA was a 50% discrepancy of us going to jail over, other races.
Yeah. Wow. And even with the cannabis, we're 3 times likely more higher. Actually, 3.6 times likely more to be arrested for cannabis in the places where it is not legal.
And what I was pointing out to you earlier is that it used to be legal. Like it used to be legal to smoke weed in this country. And it was the whole... this phenomena of people saying that black jazz artists were getting white girls high off weed and having their way with them. And that was the impetus for pushing to get weed to become illegal. And it's weird because even as somebody that's not a super weed person, but who really likes alcohol, I know weed is a lot less dangerous than alcohol.
Sure. And so, and that's usually the problem that we have with the show. Like we talk about one thing and then, you know, the conversation just kind of goes. I mean, the whole point is having the show flow. But I mean, this feels like we need to have a part 2.
I know, right?
Somewhere. And talk about because we talk about the drinking part, but there's a whole nother topic on the drugs and cannabis.
There's another topic on the
that
drugs.
we should actually think about doing in part 2.
And I would love to do something that didn't involve any of those at some point, even if it's a year or 2 from now. Because when you said that, I was like, is that what people think when they think of me? Are they like, oh, we're gonna do one on alcohol? I know who to call. You know what I mean?
Nah. So the idea was, I know you as the poet, the world traveler, like also just one of the smartest cats that I know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's another reason to drink. I'm sorry.
Entertaining.
Yeah, that's why I drink. Yeah, because I'm so smart.
So no. To make not you, but to make other people, some people, make sense to you. Sometimes it don't work when you're sober. Like, what are they talking about? And then sometimes you drink, you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, that's what I said.
What were you gonna say? Though? What were you gonna say?
No, just that your presence here, bro, is like it's we're blessed to have you here. You know what I mean?
I'm grateful that you asked.
Like,
I just hated that.
You're that dude.
That feeling of like, it wasn't like, yo, we're gonna have a show on poetry called Talaam. It's like, yo, we're gonna have a show on drinking.
No, but the poetry
point
is the easy ask for you, man. You know what I mean? You've done 1,000,001 podcasts and talked about poetry. Right.
The whole point of the podcast is we have guests on for them to come on and not talk about
what they
and go a little deeper.
And a part of that I'm taking with me, what I'm projecting, I think, is I know of a lot of people. Like when people talk about Ntozake Shange, that's what they bring up a lot. You know what I mean? People, they're people. I don't even want to mention my name, but when they bring them up, that's what they think of. Like I know famous people, artists, writers, and when people bring them up, people are long gone now. But they talk about like, oh yeah, and he had a bottle with him, of course. Like it ain't even a story if they don't mention that the person was drinking.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean?
But you know what? People in their journeys are important to really share because people learn from other people because you've seen things that I haven't seen that none of us have seen. And so it's important to hear from you because that's where we get the lessons from, the people who've been come before us to give us the lessons on what's really important in life. And you've shown us that.
I hope there's some value to some of the things. I know that my mind goes in a million different directions, so I apologize for that. And the point of having the paper, which as you can see is blank, was so that I can write down things I wanted to say without interrupting people. Sure. And here's the testament to how much interrupting I've been doing.
No. We got your testimony, and that's really powerful.
We appreciate you and your transparency.
Yeah, brother.
Yeah, and just a reminder that, we all are multi-layered, multi-dimensional individuals.